What happens when country music royalty collides with daytime talk show firestorms? What happens when decades of unspoken industry truths finally detonate on live television? Today we unpack the explosive moment that left audiences stunned and changed the view forever. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts, because this one cuts deep. The morning began like any other inside ABC's studio. The chatter of crew, the hum of cameras, the audience ready for another light-hearted hour. But nothing could have prepared anyone for what happened when Reba McEntire stepped on that stage. Joy Behar opened with her trademark grin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the queen of country music, Reba McEntire." Applause thundered. Reba, radiant in a burgundy blazer, walked to her seat. But behind the flawless smile, her eyes carried something heavier. "Reba, it's wonderful to have you," Joy began, flipping her notes. "You've been making headlines, not just for your tour, but for comments about the industry. You said entertainment has lost its way, that it's become too political. Some people found that rich coming from someone who's been in Hollywood for decades." The studio went silent. Reba's posture stiffened, her jaw set. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said coolly. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward. "I watched that interview 3 times. You said entertainment should stay out of politics. That celebrities need to remember their place. Sounded clear enough to me." Reba's accent sharpened. "What I said is that we've forgotten how to entertain without lecturing people. There's a difference," Sarah Haynes cut in, measured but firm. "But Reba, isn't that itself a political statement? Saying not to be political is political," but turned, locking eyes with her. "Sweetheart, I'm not being political. I'm being practical. People watch TV to escape. They buy tickets to forget their problems, not to be told how to think every 5 minutes." The tension was thick now. Joy tried to redirect. "But surely you understand. With a platform comes responsibility." "Responsibility to who?" Reba snapped. "To you, or to the folks paying for the tickets, the albums, the streams." The audience gasped. Alyssa Farrah Griffin finally jumped in. "Reba, your comments suggest entertainers shouldn't use their voices for causes. Isn't that hypocritical, given you've spoken out before?" Reba let out a short, humorless laugh. "Hypocritical? Hypocritical is sitting here in Manhattan apartments, making millions, and lecturing working-class Americans about values." The crowd erupted. Gasps, murmurs, a few cheers. Joy's face flushed scarlet. "Are you saying we don't have the right to speak our minds?" "I'm saying maybe step outside your bubble once in a while, before deciding what's best for everyone." Reba shot back. Whoopi's voice thundered. "Hold up. You come on our show, our platform, and take shots at us? That's not okay." "I'm not attacking anyone," Reba replied, steady despite the heat. "I'm pointing out the disconnect, and if you want the truth." She turned deliberately to the camera. "The truth is, regular people are tired of being talked down to. They're tired of entertainers acting like preachers. They just want to be entertained." The studio shook with tension. Sunny Hostin leaned in, her voice edged. "So speaking about equality, about justice, that's talking down?" "There's a time and a place," Reba countered. "And maybe folks deserve a break from being force-fed agendas when they're just trying to enjoy a song." Joy's voice cracked with anger. "An agenda? Reba, fighting for human rights isn't an agenda. It's basic decency. And who decides what counts as rights?" Reba shot back. "You! Hollywood executives? Politicians?" Whoopi slammed her hand on the table. Everyone jumped. "When you have a platform, you use it for good." Reba's voice rose to meet hers. "According to whose definition of good? That's the problem right there. You think you get to decide what's right for everybody else." The cameras captured every glance, every tremor in the air, as the clash reached its boiling point. Joy tried to wrestle back control, but her voice betrayed the strain. "Reba, you're missing the point. We use our platform to fight injustice. To give a voice to the voiceless. Reba laughed, low, incredulous. You want to help people? Then stop treating them like they're too stupid to think for themselves. Stop assuming they need you to explain every issue. Sarah jumped in, her tone measured but tense. Reba, silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Don't you agree? Reba turned, eyes blazing. And I think what I'm saying is maybe your definition of injustice isn't always theirs. Maybe they're more worried about putting food on the table than the hashtag of the week. The audience stirred, uneasy murmurs cutting through the silence. Joy leaned forward, gripping her cards so tightly they bent. So you're saying we shouldn't care about social issues because people have bills to pay? That's a false choice. Reba's reply was dangerously calm. No, Joy. I'm saying maybe you should try connecting with people instead of lecturing them. Try listening to their perspective instead of dismissing it. The tension snapped tighter. There was no commercial break to save anyone. The confrontation was barreling towards something bigger, and everyone felt it. Whoopi leaned back, her voice heavy with warning. Reba, let me ask you straight. When you see injustice, people being attacked, discriminated against, do you just stay quiet because it might make someone uncomfortable? Reba didn't blink. I help where I can, Whoopi, but I don't pretend my way is the only way, and I don't tear people down for seeing things differently. Joy's voice cracked with disbelief. Attack people? Reba, we're not attacking anyone. We're speaking truth to power. Reba shot back instantly. Whose truth, yours? The truth your writers hand you? The truth your network approves? Because out there... She jabbed a finger toward the audience. Millions of Americans have a different truth, and every day you dismiss them as ignorant. The crowd gasped. Alyssa tried to intervene, but Reba pressed forward, her momentum unstoppable. You want to know what's happening? People are tuning out. They're walking away. They're sick of being preached at by people who don't live in their world. Sonny's voice was tight, almost trembling. So what, ignore racism? Ignore sexism? Ignore inequality? Just to keep people comfortable? Reba's Oklahoma drawl thickened. I'm saying maybe your approach isn't working. Maybe people don't want to be talked down to. Maybe they're tired of being called evil just for thinking differently. The audience was riveted, silent. Joy leaned in, her voice cutting like a blade. Reba, let me ask you directly. Are you saying fighting for civil rights is wrong? Reba's voice snapped, sharp as broken glass. Don't you dare twist my words, Joy. I'm saying turning every performance, every film, every song into a political lecture is wrong. I'm saying branding everyone who disagrees with you as hateful is wrong. I'm saying maybe you should listen for once instead of preaching. Whoopi slammed her palm against the table, rattling cups and making the audience jump. Listen to what, Reba? To people who vote against equality, who try to strip rights away. No, thank you. Reba's finger shot across the table at Whoopi. There it is. Right there. That's the problem. You can't even imagine that someone might disagree with you without being evil. You just proved my point better than I ever could. Sarah's voice cut through, desperate for balance. Reba, I think what Whoopi is saying is some issues are black and white, right and wrong. There's no gray when it comes to human dignity. Reba turned on her. And who decides what dignity means? You? This table? Because I can tell you right now, there are families out there who feel their dignity is under attack when their kids come home, being told their parents are monsters for their beliefs. Joy slammed her hand down, the crack echoing. Their beliefs? Reba, if those beliefs involve hating people, then yes, maybe their kids should hear another perspective. Reba's eyes blazed. Joy, do you hear yourself? You just assumed anyone who disagrees with you hates people. That's the arrogance I'm talking about. The studio air was suffocating. Whoopi leaned forward, voice booming. When people vote against equality, against women, against LGBTQ rights, what do you call that? Reba didn't miss a beat. I call it democracy. I call it people trying to solve problems in their own way. But you call it hate, because it's easier than actually listening to why they think differently. The room buzzed with unease. Alyssa's voice was strained, almost pleading. "But Reba, can't you see why people get frustrated when others vote against their rights?" For the first time, Reba's tone softened. Just slightly. "Of course I can understand frustration, but maybe the answer isn't to keep shouting louder. Maybe the answer is to start listening harder." The audience erupted into a mix of cheers and gasps, the studio vibrating with the sheer force of the exchange. The cameras zoomed in tight, catching every flicker of emotion across their faces. Whoopi leaned forward, her tone cutting like steel. "Reba, no one is mocking faith. What we're saying is that faith can't be a weapon. It can't be the excuse for denying people their humanity." Reba's eyes blazed. "And what I'm saying is that disagreement isn't denial. Believing something different doesn't make me your enemy. But that's how you frame it, every single time. If I don't march in lockstep with your politics, suddenly I'm dangerous." Sunny's voice cracked like a whip, because sometimes those differences translate into laws that decide who gets to marry, who gets health care, who's protected from violence. That's not just disagreement, Reba. That's life or death. For a moment, the tension in the studio was suffocating. Reba sat back, her chest rising and falling, her voice lower now but carrying a sharper edge than ever. "Then, maybe the real problem is that you've stopped believing people who disagree with you are even capable of love or compassion. Maybe you've convinced yourselves that the only way forward is to shame half the country into silence. But silencing people doesn't change their minds. It only makes them harder." The studio fell into a stunned hush. Even the control booth froze, unsure if this moment was combustible television gold or a disaster spiraling out of control. Whoopi shook her head slowly, her voice rumbling with finality. "Reba, love without equality isn't love. Compassion without justice isn't compassion. And if you can't see that—" Reba cut her off, her words slicing through the air. "And if you can't see that respect goes both ways, then maybe you're the one who's lost sight of what equality actually means." The clash landed like a thunderclap, leaving the entire studio breathless, hanging on the precipice of what might come next. "But somehow that's okay," Reba pressed on, "because you've all decided your way of loving is the only right way." The audience leaned forward, perched on the edge of their seats. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch no one had anticipated. Sarah tried one last time, her voice trembling but calm. "I think we can all agree that love and acceptance should be the goal for everyone." Reba's eyes cut toward her, sharp as glass. "Can we? Because from where I'm sitting, love and acceptance only apply if you think the right thoughts and vote the right way. Step outside that line, and suddenly you're fair game. For attacks, for character assassination, for professional destruction." Joy's hands shook as she clutched her cards. "Character assassination? Reba, holding people accountable for their actions and their votes isn't character assassination." Reba laughed bitterly. "Accountability? Is that what you call destroying someone's career because they donated to the wrong candidate? Is that what you call combing through decade-old tweets to manufacture outrage? Is that what you call turning every disagreement into a holy war?" Whoopi rose to her feet, her voice booming through the studio. "When people's actions strip others of basic rights, when their votes deny equality, then yes, there must be consequences." Reba stood too, face to face with her. "And when your actions destroy people of faith, when your so-called consequences crush their livelihoods, where are their protections? Or do they not matter because they're not part of your coalition?" The tension was suffocating. Security edged closer to the set. The audience gasped at every exchange. Joy finally snapped, screaming, "Religious freedom doesn't give you the right to discriminate against people. And political freedom doesn't give you the right to discriminate against religious people." Reba screamed back. Sunny tried to step in, but Reba plowed forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You want to know what's really happening? People are afraid. Afraid to speak, afraid to believe, afraid to dissent. Because they know people like you will destroy them if they dare. Whoopi's voice was thunder. People like us are fighting for equality, for justice, for human rights. Reba's reply sliced the air. No, you're fighting for conformity, for everyone to think exactly like you think, believe exactly what you believe, vote exactly how you vote. And if they don't, you silence them. The studio exploded into pandemonium. Hosts shouted over one another. Audience members yelled from the stands. The cameras caught every flicker of rage, fear, and defiance. Joy rose, voice cracking with fury. That's enough! Whoopi slammed her hand on the table, her voice commanding silence. Reba, if you think fighting for people's rights is the same as forcing conformity, then maybe you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Reba swept her gaze across the table of hostile faces, then locked eyes with the camera, her words cut like a final blade. Maybe you need to look in the mirror. You claim to fight for tolerance, but you're the most intolerant people on television. You claim to fight for inclusion, but you exclude anyone who disagrees. You claim to fight for diversity, but the only diversity you value is skin deep. The studio fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on every corner of the room. Whoopi's voice came next, low and lethal. I think we're done here. No, Joy said, her voice trembling with rage. We've been done for a while. Security. As guards moved in, Reba calmly gathered her purse, her dignity unbroken. She rose, turned once more to face the hosts, and said evenly, You know what's saddest? I came here hoping for a real conversation, but you can't converse with people who think disagreement equals evil. She walked toward the exit as the cameras tracked her every step. At the doorway, she turned one last time. Good luck building bridges when all you know how to do is burn them down. The audience sat frozen, the silence deafening. The show cut abruptly to commercial. The confrontation was over, but the fallout had only begun.